Welcome to Points in the Podcast. I am Elias Schuster. As always, I am joined by Matt Rooney, and we are sitting here one night after the Chicago Bull, or one day after the Chicago Bulls
Yeah,
ended up, roughly,
depending
almost.
on when you're listening to
Yeah,
this.
depending on when you're listening. After the Chicago Bulls strung together their third straight victory. So this is 3 wins in a row. You had one over the Milwaukee Bucks, one over the New Orleans Pelicans, and now one over the Charlotte Hornets. And Matt, this win last night, not nearly as impressive as the other two, but it's just impressive that they were able to even put together 3 wins, because this team that we saw in the first 18 games or so of the season versus the one we've seen over the last 6 or so games, really the last 3, it is just completely different.
They just feel like they're playing like there's a giant chip off their shoulder, like there's a giant weight lifted off their
Yeah.
shoulders. And I stressed it so much last time we talked about this, and I stressed it today in the around the NBA thing I did. Like, it's not that Zach LaVine is a bad teammate or a bad player or the guys don't like him. It's just the fact that I think everybody knows that it's done and that he's,
Mhm.
kind of on his way out. Obviously, he's hurt now, and we'll get to that. But like, LaVine being off the floor has kind of opened things up. And I actually do think the one game without DeMar helped them too, kind of
Yeah.
get their feet wet and just get
Yeah.
getting thrown into the pool. And
Which
like,
was the
all right, we're going to,
Milwaukee game. Yes.
yes, and the Milwaukee game they won. And it just kind of let them run the offense they want to run, play the style they want to play without having to worry about Zach, without having to worry about DeMar getting their touches and all that, and just go play basketball. And I think that game was kind of a turning point, at least for the young guys. And I'm not by any means saying that this is, well, they're going to make a run and go to the playoffs now, and even
Yeah.
that they're going to be in a play-in tournament
And they
team. But
shouldn't,
like,
and that shouldn't be what we
that
want.
shouldn't be the goal. That shouldn't be the expectation.
Yeah.
If it happens, whatever, great. Like if they don't, provided that they don't trade Zach for assets that just help them get there, provided they trade him for future pieces. If they go on a run and get there because Kobe White keeps up this type of play, and because Patrick Williams keeps playing more aggressive, and Ayo Dosunmu becomes like your ideal off the bench point guard, that's awesome, and I'll be really happy. But that's no longer like the expectation for the year. Like that's like a bonus. I just want to see those guys playing well, and they've gotten the opportunity to play the offense, play the system that they want to play that fits today's style of NBA.
Yeah, well, and I think that's what we definitely want to focus on a little bit on in this show today. We're going to talk about the young guys. I think we're going to get into a little bit of what we've seen from Kobe in particular. He's obviously really strung together a strong stretch here. Broke a little 3-point record in the Bulls franchise last night by hitting his 9th game with three 3-pointers. So kind of a weird record, but impressive. Lauri Markkanen was the previous holder of that record with 8 games, and Kobe tied him obviously against the Pelicans and broke the record now for Charlotte. So he's had a really strong stretch here. He's clearly their number one shooter right now, and he's been really strong. But also, like you mentioned, we've gotten good minutes from Ayo Dosunmu. It's been fun to see him. And
he looks more like rookie year Ayo than last year's
right,
Ayo.
for sure. And I think because rookie year Ayo, which a lot of this team has been the problem. Rookie year Ayo is playing with less. He was playing with more. I can't believe I'm even playing right now because Lonzo Ball's hurt, and I'm just giving you, here's my raw talent, here's my raw skills, and thinking a lot less. And I think last year was more. I'm thinking the game, and it's because defenses adjusted to him. They knew what to expect. And this season's back to him. He doesn't have to overthink things. So he's looked a lot better out there. And then even Patrick Williams has shown some spurts, and Julian Phillips. So I think the young guys, this is a promising thing, a rare promising aspect of this season that we can get into, and hopefully we see continue over these next few weeks. So before we do that, though, however, I do want to focus on LaVine. We mentioned how he's been out these 3 games. And DeMar DeRozan was out, obviously one of them, but he's played the last 2. And LaVine, though, it's not a coincidence, I would say, that a 3-game win streak happens because LaVine's out. I'm not saying that it's solely because he's off the floor, but whether it be due to a more motivated team because they feel like, hey, Zach's out, we have to have his back, play harder. Whether that's the reason, which it's quite possible for some players it is, or it is just the aspect of LaVine's out, I can defer less, I'm more comfortable to play my game. That's also very possible. But whatever the reason may be, the team's playing a lot better, and we're going to see if they can keep that up as they now embark on a tougher stretch of the schedule after Friday, and the announcement comes that Zach LaVine is out for 3 to 4 more weeks. So that announcement came after the Charlotte Hornets
Wasn't
victory.
that kind of weird timing too? Like, I'm not conspiracy theorist. I know we're gonna get to his quotes, and it sounds like I don't doubt that he's actually dealing with an injury. But last week on the podcast, you and I talked about how we wouldn't be surprised if that foot injury became a legitimate foot injury, and we're going to play it really safe and just keep him off the floor till he's 100% healthy and not rush him back. Like, just felt like interesting timing that right after they win their third consecutive game and look good again, and the young kids play well again, that announcement drops.
Well, yeah. So look, I think he's hurt. Let's just start there. I'm not going to downplay an injury,
I agree with that. There is
especially
something wrong with his foot.
yes, especially after, which we'll get to in a second, some of what he had to say today. He waited to speak to the media until this morning, one night after the game. He didn't want to talk to them after the game. The reason for that, he said this morning, was because he just wanted to give them the guys time to celebrate the win, celebrate 3 win. He didn't want to take away from the fact that they were finally playing well, whatever. Which I respect. He said, I'll just talk to the media tomorrow about it. And so for me, he definitely made it sound like, yeah, he's dealing with something. He got an injection in his foot. Like, there's something going on. But at the same time, this is a guy that we've seen play through pretty severe injuries. I mean, 2 years ago, he played through a knee injury that needed surgery in the offseason. We've seen him play through, a pretty bad finger injury in the past. Like, there's been bumps and bruises that he's always played through. And is it possible that he can't play through this one? Sure. A foot injury, we all know they can be, they can linger. That really restricts you, obviously, on a basketball court. But at the same time, there's this trade looming over everything. And I would not be surprised if, yes, he's hurt, but there's an abundance of caution being taken when you're calculating how many weeks he's going to be sitting out. So when you're adding 3 to 4 weeks, and now it'll be 5, adding this past week, it'll be 5 total weeks of him on the bench. Is it possible that, last year, this wouldn't have been the timeline? Yeah, I think so. Like, he may be more willing to, and his camp and the Bulls might be more willing to let him, play through a little bit of pain. But when a trade's looming, a team wants him fully healthy. And he also wants to probably go to whatever team he's going to go to next fully healthy, so he can try to contribute right away. So I don't want to, like you said, I don't want to be a conspiracy theory person, like all this stuff. It's possible it's just an injury and that's that. But at the same time, with the trade stuff looming, it's hard not to think that might play a role in how they're tackling the current injury. If that makes sense.
I think if he wasn't on the trade block, we wouldn't have had an announcement last night that he's out 3 to 4 weeks. Maybe he's gonna be out the rest of this week, and we'll reevaluate at the beginning of next week, or something like that. I don't think. I think with how the team's playing and with obviously his situation, that has to factor into why they just immediately went out and said, "Yep, it's going to be a month."
And also just who he is. Like that's what the bigger thing for me.
He's never really, outside of the knee, like he's never really missed significant time. And even with the knee, what was it, 2 years? The year they went to, like, he battled through just a bum knee all year after the torn ACL, or the torn ACL, but the knee. Like, he tried to play through it all the time, and at times his play suffered because of it. But he never once was like, "Yeah, you got to shut me down for a month."
Right. And I think especially with the way the team's playing right now, that he would be someone that's like, oh, look, we're stringing together some wins. I want to be out there to try to help string together some more wins, especially when we consider that, this is a good story right now, and they're going to play the Spurs next on Friday. So don't anyone be surprised if they end up at,
oh no, the Spurs are winning that game. That's absolutely, like, Bulls are riding high. Spurs have lost 14 in a row. That's when the Spurs win.
The Spurs have 3 wins this year. So I would, of course, it's the Bulls. So I would not be surprised if the Spurs do snap their streak against them. They're back at home
too. Just sprinkle the money line.
Yeah. But at the same time, if they do get 4 in a row, no one's going to be surprised. But after that, things get really, really difficult. That's when that schedule against, Milwaukee several times comes up. They play the Sixers. They're going to play Miami again in a 2-game little mini series. So there's a lot of tough games.
Mini series. It's like the third one this year.
Yeah, there's a lot. They keep adding them to the schedule.
I don't hate it, but it's just throwing me off. I'm not used to it.
I know they've keep sprinkling them in more and more over the past couple of years. But yeah, this is going to be a tougher stretch of the schedule here. So old Zach, or non-trade looming Zach, in my opinion, and with the Bulls, they would think, okay, let's take it week to week. We have a tough schedule. Zach wants to be out there to try to help them, with this tough stretch coming up. So I just think it's context that obviously is still important regardless of what the team says. And just with what we know from LaVine in the past, is it possible it's unrelated at all? Sure, but it's, I think, context that people like us, when you're just trying to think about it from the outside, it's hard not to add into the equation. And
For sure.
the last thing I would say about his timeline currently, with the 3 to 4 weeks being out, this will take him obviously past that December 15th date, which is a huge date because majority of the players that signed this offseason in free agency are going to be eligible to be traded. And then he should return, if we'll see if they add more to this, but theoretically he would return before January 15th, which is the next date that at that point, all free
That's
agents
everybody, right?
signed over the off. Yeah. So that's a smaller bunch between the December 15th and January 15th. It's not like we're talking about 90% or so, I think, or over 90 players that signed this offseason will be eligible to be traded on the 15th. And then there's a handful out there that can't until January 15th. So he won't be that far out, but like if they add some more on, is it crazy to think they could, is it crazy to think we could have seen the last of him in a Bulls uniform at this point? It's a question at least worth asking because of how long he's going to be out now. And there's no question in my mind that we will see some trade rumors after that December 15th, like more direct reports on what teams may be willing to offer, what teams are interested will likely come out after that December 15th, restriction deadline is lifted.
Yeah, like I don't think that's crazy to say, but I also don't think the Bulls would be, unless they got an offer that blew them away. Like that timing works out too perfectly for 3 to 4 weeks to be, 1 to 2 weeks ahead of that January 15th deadline, just enough time for him to be fully healthy, come back, nothing wrong with that foot, and like go ahead and play good basketball for 2 weeks. He's going to be motivated because he's going to want to go somewhere that he wants to, he's going to kind of want to pick his spot. And the better he plays, excuse me, the more suitors, the more teams that he probably wants to go to are going to want him. Like it makes too much sense for both sides for him to come back and play with not for a very long time, but for 10 days before that January 15th deadline, just enough time for him to have a couple good games, stack some things together, and bring that trade value back up again. Makes more sense for the Bulls, but I think it really does make both sense for both parties. More sense for both, a lot of sense for both parties.
Yeah.
Because like, if he wants, I'm not saying it's just picking a name out of a hat. If he wants to go to the Sixers, he would love to show the Sixers a week before that he can be traded there that, hey, I'm healthy, I'm good, like my foot's good. Look at this, you want me.
Well, and I think what we should consider too, we talk about all these dates, but then let's talk about the biggest date, which is going to be in early February, which is the February trade deadline. So that date is going, if he does return in January, first week of January, that's 1 month out from February 8th, basically. That will be the trade deadline for the league. And so he could even have a month to, ramp things up and show that he's good to go. So I agree with you. I think it's not 50-50. I'd still say it's probably like 60-40 in my brain that he suits up again, just because there's also been reports that the interest in him hasn't been, great. A lot of that I think is more related to the fact that we're very early in the season. A lot of trades don't happen right now anyway, especially for people that are making as much money as LaVine. So we'll see exactly how little interest there is once these restrictions are lifted over the next couple of weeks. But there might be truth in the fact that there's just teams right now, if they're going to take on his salary, take on a player that you isn't the easiest necessarily to integrate into what you're doing, or you at least he has to have the ball. He's got to be a big part of what you're doing. So if you're going to add a player like that, then you want to see that he's playing well, and you want to see
some assurances,
fully healthy. Yeah, and he, like, let's not beat around the bush. He didn't play well over the first few weeks of the season. Is that because of the trade stuff? Whatever, like maybe, but at the same time, that's not what teams want to see. His efficiency around the rim was way down. This was one of his least efficient scoring seasons, basically since coming to Chicago, or since his first year coming off the ACL. So it's and I think if he was out there playing healthy, like that, all those numbers would start to figure themselves out. But that's the thing. He needs to probably come back out there still, show that, hey, have a couple of good games, string them together, and show like, no, I'm fine. The foot issue's not there.
Yeah.
My efficiency hasn't really dropped off. I was just not happy here, and that's what happened. So I still think, it's probably more likely that we see him suit back up in January before a trade gets done before February.
Yeah, I'm popping open their schedule now. Tuesday, January 2nd. They have a back-to-back with Philly on, or not back-to-back, but home and home. The December 30th, January 2nd at New York in prime time on ABC. Wednesday, January 3rd.
Oh, that could be an
Those
interesting one to keep an eye
those
on.
games kind of feel like maybe when he comes back. Like I would, if it's New Year's Eve, probably, or the day before New Year's Eve, probably not. Maybe that back-to-back against Philly is his last two out, but I feel like Madison Square Garden on a primetime stage, his foot's feeling better. That might be one where he's like, all right, yeah, I can kind of come back and show off what I got.
Well, yeah, December 27th would mark the 4 weeks out from the announcement yesterday, and January 3rd would mark, or 3 weeks out. Sorry, the December 27th would be 3 weeks out, and January 3rd would mark the 4 weeks out. So, and then
that works out too, because he got at New York, but then 2 against Charlotte, which you'd think would be 2 games that he could probably play pretty well in, and then 1 against Houston, and that gets you to January. Then January 12th, Golden State, January 13th, San Antonio. Like, there's a run of bad opponents there where you could probably throw him in and have him show off a little bit, run things up, and pump up that trade value, and that feels like a good run for him.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the schedule lightens up pretty significantly once the 2024 calendar begins. So there's a lot of games there in January for him to kind of boost his value if that's needed. If they realize that's needed over the next couple of weeks. So what I want to give here is just what he said this morning. Like we said, he didn't want to talk to the media, or at least his reasoning was wanted the team to kind of celebrate their win. Didn't want to take away. Yeah, I would buy it too. And so he spoke with them this morning, which is on Thursday, before the team left for San Antonio. So what I'm reading to you, it comes via Casey Johnson over at NBC Sports Chicago, which is what he shared. He said that this was a quote from LaVine. First off, I'll share just what the injury stuff was. So he said, I try to play through everything. He said he doesn't pull punches. He's definitely someone that wants to be out there. He basically told reporters that he tried to play yesterday. The inflammation, however, on the right side of his foot kind of worsened as he tried to ramp up to get ready to play for either yesterday or this coming Friday. And so that's when the team ended up giving him a PRP injection in his foot. And they decided that it would be best to wait these handful of weeks to see if his foot will calm down. So I also buy the fact that he probably tried to ramp up. Like we said, he tries to play everything, and it just wasn't it just wasn't responding in the way that he wanted. So then when he was asked, kind of about the fact that, hey, this is weird timing. This is the team's also playing better without you. How's that feel? That kind of thing. A quote from LaVine was, am I still a part of the team and very committed? Yeah, I got a Bulls jersey on. I committed here. For as long as I'll be here, I'll still support and love Chicago and play my heart out for those guys. That's never going to change, end quote. So I also buy that from him. Because
so do I.
At the end of the day, we've talked about it. That the one instance about him coming off the court that was weird and it put kind of like, casting the PR person aside and being a little bit of a drama king is not what he usually does. That was unexpected. He's more like this. He's more somebody who says the right thing. He tries to be respectful and professional. And so, and on the bench, those past couple of games when the team was playing well, he'd be standing up. He'd be high-fiving guys. He was cheering on Instagram. I know this is a little thing, but he's been sharing the highlights on his Instagram story, Kobe White giving fire emojis and stuff. So, like, he's it's not like he's asking
he's not pouting and like going away from the team. He's still being a good teammate. And that's something we've been saying here for a while. Like, he's a good teammate. It's just probably something that's run its course, and that's okay. That happens with players and teams.
Right. So at the end of the day, what I would say about this is, I think it's kind of the worst possible news that he is really injured when we kind of factor in his trade value here, which is like the last thing I'd want to discuss with LaVine today is just, the trade value is no doubt kind of dropping, which is why it goes back to what we just talked about of why I think he'd have to play or come back and play some more, because it's easy to sit a guy out and then just tell the other teams, hey, he's not actually hurt. Like, even ask the front office. He's fine.
Yeah. Here's his medicals. He's fine. We're just doing this.
Yeah, we're just doing this to make sure that he doesn't have to play. He doesn't injure himself, and he's just ready to get traded. That's happened in the past with people. It's possible that's still happening to an extent here. But when you're getting like an injection in your foot, when you're, actually going through these issues, you're trying to ramp up, it's not responding. Like that all sounds legit. And
Mhm.
that also is the worst case scenario because now he's actually hurt. And that gives teams a legitimate reason to be somewhat concerned. Should this time off help him? Yes. It doesn't sound like it's going to be a super, severe long-term injury, anything like that. But let's not pretend that LaVine hasn't been someone who's missed games in the past. Like we talk about, he tries to play through a lot, but he's also
Mhm.
injured a lot. So I'm sure many teams are factoring that into the equation when they're trying to trade for him. And so when you're trading for him and he's coming right off a foot injury, it's definitely something that's going to be brought up in negotiations when the Bulls are trying to get the most out of him. Teams are going to say like, well, he's banged up right now. He's cost a lot of money. He also, your team's performing better. That's the other thing. Without him, how much you want to actually connect the two is up to you. But there's no doubt that opposing teams are going to use that against the Bulls in
Oh yeah.
negotiations.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's going to be, I think they're not in, the Bulls don't have the upper hand right now. And that's not surprising. We've talked about that before on the show. But this scenario right now makes it even worse.
Yeah, let's just hope he comes back in a month and plays a couple weeks of good basketball. I think that's the kind of the best you can hope for here.
Yeah. Speaking of good basketball, let's talk about how the fact that we actually have seen that over the last
It's
couple of
wild.
games. This has been genuinely fun hoops from the Bulls for the first time this year. It started with that Milwaukee win, which was shocking. It was very Bulls in one sense, but also still very shocking. And they ended up beating Milwaukee 120 to 113. Then they take down the New Orleans Pelicans 124-118. The thing I found most impressive about that Pelicans victory was like over the, I can't remember the exact number. It was like probably 9-10 games coming into that game for New Orleans. They were the number 2 defense in the NBA. They were playing extremely well coming into that one. And the Bulls ended up shooting 40 or 54% from the field. They think 17 threes to shoot 42.5% from downtown. And they dished 32 assists for the second time. They also did so against Milwaukee. So the ball was really popping. And last night was an example of a game that wasn't as high flying offensively in terms of their efficiency. They only shot 42% from the field technically, and they also had 16 turnovers. But Matt, the last night's game, I thought was the first time this season I at halftime sat there and I was like, they're going to win this game. Like I felt completely confident in it. I was not worried about them losing it. I know there was a run made by the Hornets at the end of the second quarter. That still didn't faze me. Just watching this team the last 2 games going into that one and then in that first quarter, I was like, no, this team gets it right now. Like they're locked in. I'm not worried about, this thing falling apart. Kobe's playing well. The young guys are playing well. DeMar and Vooch were, they were doing their thing. And I just felt comfortable for the first time. Like, okay, the Hornets are bad. The Bulls are also bad, but they're going to win this game.
Yeah, they were playing with more confidence. Like I don't know where that's necessarily coming from. I mean, I guess it's probably just coming from the last few games, but like I don't know. It just seems like the younger guys, especially, are playing with a lot more confidence. It seems like, well, DeMar and Vooch are always going to get their points and get their shots. It seems like they become less of like focal points of the
Yeah,
offense
more
and more of just
complimentary.
like complementary pieces to the offense. Which good on them for doing that and being. I mean, DeMar's a complimentary piece. He puts up 19 or 29 points last night. Like that's not to mean that he's not a major point in the offense, but
Right.
like the offense doesn't seem to necessarily run through them anymore because they're the veterans and that's how it should be. It's nope, like this is like Kobe's running the offense. It's the offense we want to do and like run, and everybody's going to get theirs. And it's just a much more sustainable style of basketball. And defensively, they're playing well. Caruso's just, I love that guy. He's so awesome. I never want him
Yeah.
to get traded, but I also want him to get traded. But yeah, it just even when the Hornets were making a run, I know LaMelo Ball wasn't playing, so that kind of
Yeah.
helps factor into not believing they can
And
make
Mark
a comeback.
Williams,
But
honestly, the big man,
yep.
who was,
But like I don't know, it just I'm with you. It just something felt different last night. It just you could feel the confidence a little bit more in that group, and like it never felt like they weren't in control.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to. And I don't want to just sound like lazy with analysis, but it honestly just, I felt like a more comfortable and confident basketball team. It was, like I said, they didn't shoot it particularly well. They didn't dish as many assists as they did the previous 2 games, and again, that goes back to not shooting it as well. But it was a team that understood how they wanted to play, which is the biggest thing they struggled with. We heard all this stuff about up tempo, about unselfish playmaking, about driving to the rim and kicking out behind the 3-point line to kind of start your offense. And we heard all this stuff during the offseason, and then the games start, and it just stays stagnant. They remained, last in the league in pace. They were really struggling in all facets of their offensive game. The three stars on the floor, the big three or whatever, they were not playing off one another in the way that they sold to fans that they would be able to. And so now you take LaVine out of the equation, which is that's not exactly what I want to get at here, but
Yeah.
you take him out of the equation. I think it does play a factor, and not only does that make the young guys have to step up, it makes now that they've done that and they've seen them get 2 wins, they're more confident in their ability to do so. But yeah, also DeMar and Vooch, I give them credit because DeMar in the Pelicans game, he dished 10 assists. Last night he wasn't playing the role of primary facilitator. He only had 3 assists against the Hornets. However, he got to the free throw line 12 of 14 times. He understood in that game, okay, the team's playing up tempo against New Orleans. I'm going to facilitate. The team's playing the way they're going to play. What I can do in this game is get to the free throw line, take advantage of this young New Orleans, or not New Orleans team, young Charlotte team, and just pick apart their young defenders and get to the line. And then Vucevic, he was just kind of taking what came to him. He scored 20 points and 12 rebounds. We know he's one of the most honestly consistent big men in the league. He always gets his points, but it wasn't stuff that had to be forced. It wasn't. I keep going back to this word, but no one was overthinking anything. It was just everyone.
They were all on the same page. They were all on the same page, and it's almost like DeMar being as smart of a basketball player as he is, and I think he has a feel for the game about as good as anybody in the league. Like you said, one game he thought, or the Pelicans game he came back in, it was like, all right, they kind of need me to do a little more facilitating tonight. Last night it was, okay, we're a little bit stagnant. I got to get to the line a little bit more. He's just kind of adapting to what the team needs on a given night. When you have a player who's willing to do that, who's as talented and as good, pretty much just about anything you ask him to, is DeMar DeRozan, you're going to be in a really good spot. And that goes back to it again. There was only one game, but I'm very glad that core, the young core, got the chance to play a game without both of them, because it gave them kind of the chance to do what they needed to do without those guys, not really have them as safety blankets, rely on them if things started to go bad. It kind of forced them to keep running the offense, keep playing the system, and it worked. And then the one game back, DeMar was kind of all right, now it's my job to fit into what they're doing, what they did well last game, and fit in where I'm needed. And he's really good. I mean, he's still producing a ton where he's needed, but it's a really valuable piece to have.
Well, yeah, and it's not only good for the young guys to see, hey, we can win these games without our big three on the floor or whatever, or just with Vucevic or what have you. It's also good for DeRozan to sit aside and see them be able to do that. It's good for Vucevic, even though he was out there, to see them, see these young guys be able to do that, because then it instills confidence in them to also be able to take a step.
So now when we have 5 minutes left in a close game, it doesn't just have to be DeMar. Just doesn't have to feel all right, I'm playing iso ball for the rest of the game. Not that was his only mindset, but that's what games were coming down to, when it would be DeMar and LaVine just taking back and forth, who's going iso. But we're learning that it doesn't have to be that way, and I think DeMar being able to see that with his own eyes is kind of all right, nice. This is progress, but this is not how it always has to be.
Right. And it's the same thing with let's remember how many big shots Alex Caruso has made over
more than anybody this year.
Yeah, he's been one of the most clutch players technically in the league with some of the big threes he's made. He made that one buzzer beater to send the game to overtime against Milwaukee, and he's played great. So yeah, but he's somebody. It's at the end of the games, they've been going to Caruso, and Kobe White's been huge, and that's who I think we should focus on a little bit here. Is Kobe has played tremendously well. He started the year kind of not as hot as we hoped. His shooting in particular was really off. I wrote about this the other day over at Bleacher Nation about all three of the players, but Kobe was really struggling early on over the first probably 18 games of the season or so. He was shooting below his normal career, even his career marks, I would say. And now over these last handful of games, he's really taken a step in the right direction, and a lot of it has to do with his 3-point shooting. But I have the numbers here. This was before last night's game, so keep that in mind. But he's averaged 20.9 points with 4.5 assists over the 7 games before the victory over the Hornets. And last night, he still scored 19 points, hit 3 threes. So even more encouraging than that, he shot 48.7% from the field and 50% from downtown heading into last night's game. And that 50% from downtown isn't on low volume. That's on 9.8 attempts per game. So he was chucking up nearly 10 attempts a night. And he's still doing that. He chucked up, I think, 7 last night. Let me see. Yeah, 7 last night. So his shooting has been tremendous, but for me, what I've liked even more is just the way that he's kind of seeing the floor at the end of the game. So he had the 5th most points heading into the 4th quarter in the entire NBA heading into that Hornets game, and he also had the 8th most assists. Oh wait, my bad. No, I said entire NBA. Let me clarify that. It was not the entire NBA. That'd be nuts. But in the entire NBA over the last 3 games heading into that one, he was 5th in 4th quarter points and 8th in assists. So he was, and especially that game against New Orleans, we saw him score or assist on 20 of their last 23 points, or it was 19 of their last 23 points.
Yeah.
And some of that was just him hitting his spot up threes, but a lot of that was assisting on some big shots as well. And that's the thing for me, is I think he's just understanding how to play with the right tempo at the right time, which for Kobe before, it was a lot of the same. It was a lot of playing at one speed. It was getting downhill and then just like chucking it up when he had the opportunity. And I think the IQ is developing in a way that it should at this many years into the league, but it's still promising to see that. He's still been way more in control of what he can do out there than we've ever seen before.
Yeah, his feel for the game, especially over the last 3, is just it feels like you were saying, kind of knows when to push the pace, knows when to pull it back, which is like, again, you said something that his IQ is growing as it should be as a young player. And it also seems like he's kind of like, beginning of the year, it kind of seemed like he was getting pulled in both directions. Like, I got to get Zach the ball. I got to get DeMar the ball. I got to get Vooch the ball. I also got to run this new offense the way we want to do it. I got to get in the paint. Like, it seemed like his head was like, going, or the wheels were spinning at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and it's hard to play good basketball, good football, good baseball, good whatever sport you're playing. When your head's going, when your head's thinking at 1,000,000 miles an hour, it's hard to really do anything all that well or all that great. And it just seems like everything's kind of slowed down for him. Not physically, obviously, because he's running the ball very much and good at that, but just mentally. Just it seems like the game is starting to slow down for him quite a bit.
Well, I think he's learning how to play that position, play point guard, like in the way that makes sense for him. Because I think at the end of the day, we always talked about with Kobe, he is a scorer. He's a natural scorer, not a true point guard. He's never going to be a true point guard. That's just how it is. But what he's doing is he's pushing the tempo, to get the ball up the floor, get it across half court. And then he's initiating that first action. He's passing it into Vooch. He's, passing it to DeRozan. Whatever he's doing, he's making sure the tempo's there, and then he gets the first action going. But then he does what he does best in a lot of ways, which is he's moving off the ball really well, and he's positioning himself to have those catch and shoot threes. Because a lot of these 3-pointers, while yes, some of them are off the dribble, some of them are pull up, most of them, I think I don't know what the percentage is today, but before the Hornets game, it was about 44% of his threes are coming in catch and shoot situations. So he initiates the action, and then he finds a way to make sure that he can be prepared for his catch and shoot jumpers. So and that's where he has always shot the ball best. Someone like Javon Carter, for instance, he's pretty good at his pull up threes. He's good in transition. Kobe has always been better as a catch and shoot threat. So he's learning how to blend those two of like, okay, I can help the offense by making sure we get down the floor, everybody's in their place, and I get the ball rolling. But then after that, I can find the way to set myself up for scoring. And obviously, that's not what he's only doing. He's still getting his fast break buckets. He still is attacking a little bit in the half court. I'd say this year is the first time, really, since his rookie year, that we've kind of seen him kind of just get to spots in the mid range and attack guys off the dribble, with a little more confidence. And so we've seen obviously plenty of that as well. But I think the bigger thing is the way he's been able to blend the two things that they're asking of him, which is, hey, help get the offense started, but then we also want you to be able to score. So he's doing both. And the last thing I'd say with Kobe is defensively, he's never gonna be a great defender, just like he'll never be a true point guard. However, he works his butt off on that end now. The higher IQ just helps, just because
the instincts seem to be starting to kick in on the defensive end.
Yeah, the instincts are definitely better, but the instincts thing goes to how many charges he's been able to draw. Heading into last night, he was first in the league in stable offensive fouls drawn, per basketball index, and I believe he's top 5 in charges drawn overall right now. So like he's just he slide in front of guys. Like that goes back to just the feel for the game thing that we're talking about,
Hmm.
the instincts. Like he's learning how to make plays on the defensive end, and so he's not going to be a stopper. He's still going to get targeted at times at the end of games by bigger players, but he's also making some plays and understanding. He's understanding that he can be a liability sometimes. So how can I make
How
the
can I
positive
limit my
plays for my
mistakes?
game?
How can I become harder to target?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I just give him a lot of credit because I think he's been probably him and Caruso, but if we're looking more at future here, Kobe's been the brightest spot of the season. Most recently, he's signed on a very, very
Team
strong
friendly deal.
3-year, $36 million deal. So when you talk about what this team might look like moving forward and if they enter rebuild mode or whatever, I mean, the way Kobe's playing right now is like that dude's a starter, like he's a starter in the league. He looks like it. Maybe he's still, another team on a very good team. They're using him as a six man or whatever, but he could play on and off the ball. And he's just looking a little bit more and more like a starter. And let's not forget that he's 23. Like
Yeah,
it's easy.
he got drafted he left it after his freshman year in Carolina.
Yeah, he
Like
left
he's
UNC after 1 year.
still very young.
Right, he's still 23 years old, which is just kinda crazy when you think about how much is ahead of him, and some guys really don't find their footing for a handful of more years, so, there's still a lot to like in what he's putting together, and I think especially this season, if and I hope the Bulls go that direction of just, "Hey, we gotta keep giving these young guys a long leash, and we'll see even more of what Kobe can do." Um, Io is another guy that I kinda just wanna touch on. Ayo
Go
Dosunmu
for it.
has played way more over these last few games. I was honestly, I understood why his minutes were decreased rather significantly to begin the season. He was basically a starter the last 2 years. We knew that wasn't really going to be the case this year with Javon Carter and Torrey Craig coming in, two veterans. But as expected, with the team losing a bunch, Donovan's like, I'm just going to go to the young guys, and
Yeah, why not?
and so Io the last 3 games now is back up to those starting level minutes, even though he's not starting. He's playing, about 30 minutes per game over the last 3. He's shot 57% from the field over the last 3. He's averaging 13 points per game. So he's doing a little bit something different each game. We saw against Milwaukee, he dished 6 assists. We saw and he had 3 steals. We saw against the Pelicans, he got another 2 steals. He scored 15 points and got to the free throw line. Like he's doing a little bit of everything. I like the pace when we talk about the pace, exactly like with Kobe and everything. Io's another guy that really kind of promotes the up tempo style that they want to play just because of how great he is in transition. But that's just naturally who he is he's always going to want to get the ball up the floor fast. But I would say that the number one thing for Io with me has actually been what he's done in the half court. I think that was an area of the game that we were always waiting to see that we saw in college a lot at Illinois. Like he was a half
Hmm.
court scorer. Yeah, the transition stuff was great, but at Illinois he was one of the best players in the country because of how he could attack you off the dribble, how he could get to a mid-range spot, and how he could kind of beat you on a first step and get to the rim. We've yet to see that translate in full effect in the NBA. However, we're getting flashes of it right now. And he took Giannis, he got a switch on to Giannis in the Milwaukee game, did a little double crossover move, hit a jumper over him, which was really impressive. We've seen him cut, on the baseline, strong to the basket a couple of times for easy looks. Like when we talk about guys like Kobe who are seeing the game better, Io's fitting right into that category
Yeah.
after last year. Like he just is understanding not only what the team's looking for, but how can I impact in the half court? Because before, at times, he would disappear in that setting.
Yeah, he's a smart player who like you said, the instincts he's starting to figure like they're starting to get better. You can tell the basketball IQ is getting better, and he just kind of seems to know his role. He's not trying to do too much, but also capitalizing on the opportunity he's been gotten that they're given. That's all you want from these young, not all you want from these young players, but that's what you want to
Yeah.
see from these young players. Like Kobe White got a bigger opportunity. He's capitalizing on it. Ayo Dosunmu has been given a bigger role over the last couple of weeks. We've started to notice him. He's playing better. Like those are the types of guys you want to build around going into the future. Not to say Ayo Dosunmu is going to be ever going to be, your star and a max player,
He's a
but like,
rotation player.
yeah,
He's a
like those are
rotation.
the types of guys that when they get opportunities, they grab the bull by the horns, no pun intended, and take advantage of the opportunity. And that's like, all right, that's a guy who's going to be here for a little bit. I can trust him. He's going to thrive when I give him a little bit, when I give him a bigger role, not just, shrink. So he's
Yeah.
been spectacular to watch.
He's on a 3-year deal as well. He's on a 3-year, like $22 million deal. So it's just
Mhm.
like you said, he's not going to be a star. He's not going to be any of that. But he could is definitely a rotation player in the
Yeah.
NBA, and he's probably like a 6-man type. But he could very well turn into a role like that.
Bulls love their
And
backup point guards.
yeah, yeah, they really do. And so he's yeah, you still want to see that development, and you want to see somebody turn into a reliable role player. And I think
Mhm.
he looked like that 100% during his freshman year, but then there were some major questions about that during that second during the sophomore campaign a little bit, especially towards the end of the year. He was just that's when he was benched, and it's just the his effectiveness wasn't what it looked like. And now he goes back to what we saw in that first year of just
Yeah.
looking a little more confident and in control. So, and that's just the point of the theme of this podcast, a more confident and in control team. But when we talk about the whole team feeling that way, it's because of what a guy like Io's doing and what a guy like Kobe's doing.
Yeah.
So that's been super encouraging. Lastly, I would just say, Patrick Williams is obviously bunched into this group. He had before last night, he had 6 games in double figures. Which I think was his longest stretch since his rookie year. So he's put together some solid games here. He only had 8 points last night, but what I really liked from Pat is before, beginning of this season, even last year, those games that he was not scoring double digits, he also wasn't rebounding, or he also wasn't impacting in really any other ways. He would just disappear. That was a big problem that we talked about with Pat heading into this year. Last night's game, while he only had 8 points, he had 9 rebounds, and 3 of those were offensive rebounds. He also had 2 blocks, and he had 2 steals. He has had now back-to-back games with 2 blocks. So, and defensively, that's always been something we've known as there. He's always been a high-level defender. I think he's only going to improve as a defender. Like he could borderline eventually become a pretty elite defender on that end. The question is, how will that offensive game continue to develop? So for me, I was encouraged by the 6 games in double figures. I was encouraged by some of the efficiency on that and the way that he was getting his shots. That would be probably the most encouraging thing that we should center on is I think before a lot of people were like, get the ball in Pat's hands and let's see him go to work, and I think that was his mindset too, is like, how am I
Mhm.
supposed to do anything if I don't have the ball in my hands more? And something's clicked where he just understands now. And maybe it was the benching, when he was playing with that second unit, when we talked about it would be a little more up and down the floor, with more ball handlers and stuff, or like with a guy like Io
Mhm.
and everything. Um, I think what he's seeing now in playing in the starting lineup again, playing alongside Kobe, is like he's understanding how to move off the ball. He's understanding when to cut back to the basket. He's ended the last like 3 games, or at least before the Hornets game, he ended the last like 3 games with big dunks. A lot of those have just come on being active and being engaged off the ball, which was his biggest issue. Was just, dude, get in there. You're big. You have a physical frame. Like, just play active and play engaged. And so we're finally seeing that from him on a more consistent basis. Even again on nights like last night where he's not scoring 10 plus points, he's rebounding 9 times and he's getting 3 on the offensive glass, and he's blocking 2 shots, and he's stealing, 2 balls. He's gotten really good at jumping passing lanes and then breaking out in transition and not hesitating to go right at the rim. So some of that aggressiveness that we've been waiting to see is definitely starting to show itself, which, putting that alongside what we're also seeing from Kobe and Io, is definitely encouraging.
Yeah, engaged, I think, is the word that you said there that really struck a chord with me. Like, offensively, especially, the results are still not quite where I want to be, but like you can see the wheels are turning a little bit more for him, and like he's starting to understand and get it a little bit more, and something's starting to click. I still would love to see more consistent double-digit point efforts, and sprinkle in a couple 20-pointers here and there. But
Sure.
the fact that the energy seems to be back, he's engaged. It doesn't seem like he's going through the motions as much anymore. You're starting to notice him more in a good way. Like you said,
Yeah.
he's all over the box score. He's stealing, he's blocking, he's grabbing boards. Like, if you're not going to, and this is what we call for at the beginning of the year, if you're not going to be dropping 10 whatever points a game, you can still affect the game. You can still, make an impact on the box score. And he's starting to realize that now. I feel like on nights where he's maybe not producing the most offense, which again, still needs to get better, then he still has definitely room to grow. I don't think he's made
Well,
quite
yeah.
the jump that Kobe or even Io is
No,
making,
yeah.
but like, it's been better. It's
Yeah.
definitely been better.
And a big reason for that too has been the 3-point shooting. That was like, for some reason, just not exist. He was always
I don't know why
yeah,
he can shoot.
yeah. But so the last 7 games though, he's up to 42% and on nearly 4 attempts per game. So like he's doing a lot better job shooting it from three. So I think that's probably giving him a little bit more confident. But from the field overall, he's shooting 52% over these last 7 games with 13 points per game. So
yeah,
it's that's just the stuff now you're getting from multiple guys, right? Before it was like, here's your three. They're the ones doing everything. Now it's like, no, here, you're getting 15 a game from Kobe. You're getting 12 a game from Io. You're getting 13 a game from Pat. Like you're getting 12 from Alex Caruso. Like they're talk about team basketball. Like the Bulls are finally playing team basketball. And look, whether that shouldn't be something the front office decides to invest in. We've talked about, we don't want them to turn LaVine into win now pieces and try to go for a playoff run. They still need to think toward the future. Yeah, that's the scary thing. They probably will. But they need to look at not these guys doing what they're doing right now, these young guys, and say, oh, see, we can still reinvent this thing and go for it. No, they need to look at it as this is a good foundation. These are 3 guys that, can be a part of a rebuild.
Yeah.
Probably none of them are going to be stars. That's fine. You still got to find your star, but you still need some good young players in the mix. And you have 3 here who, given the opportunity over these last 3 games, have reminded everybody, organization, fans, the coaching staff, have reminded everyone why they were drafted, why they were, a part of the picture. Like, and Pat is obviously a bigger conversation. He was number 4 overall pick. You still want a lot more from him, whatever. But they're just reminding everyone, like, no, it's not like this whole team, this whole roster is lost. There are some pieces here. We can be some guys that help translate things over to whatever the new roster looks like. We can provide you with some, big word for the front office, continuity, by you keeping us and letting us help you in whatever this rebuild will be. So, shout out to the young guys. They've made the roles watchable, which has been a huge
hopefully
perk.
28 hours from now in San Antonio, this podcast doesn't go to waste and they all
play a big egg. And
Jesus.
And even I would say even Julian Phillips, he's got first quarter minutes the last handful of games. He's gotten just minutes overall. He's being sprinkled in there, which I like to see. And I think we've kind of mentioned it before on the show. I just like the way that he plays. That's all you look for right now in a guy like him, is when he's getting these first handful of minutes. Like, are you just being aggressive? Like, are you not afraid to shoot it? Are you attacking the basket with authority? He's doing all that. So, my dog made an appearance. She's a big Julian Phillips fan. So I even him, I like to see that. I hope we see
he's been athletic.
Yeah, for sure. And that was the big thing coming out of Tennessee, was just his athleticism was some of the best in the draft. So I think that seeing a little bit more of him moving forward should be exciting.
Agreed.
But I think that's where we're going to wrap things up. It's nice to have a little show where we talk about some positives, talk about
where we're not just all doom and gloom about how much this sucks.
And we'll see if, but like you said, maybe tomorrow it all goes back downhill. They lose to San Antonio. Then after that, they have a tough schedule. So we'll take whatever little moments of optimism we can get on this show, and we'll just see where we're at next week.